In this presentation, you'll learn about CRUD Operations, which stands for Create, Read, Update, and Delete. You'll also learn to implement these operations using the Go programming language with SQL databases. We will also discuss the use of transactions. The tech stack includes Golang, SQL databases, and transactions. Here's how to set up a Go SQL database connection. First, import the required packages. These include the database/SQL package, the log package, and the MySQL driver. Next, establish a connection using the SQL open function with the data source name. The data source name specifies the username, password, host, and database name. If there is an error during the database opening, it will log the error using logfatal. The create operation involves inserting new records into the database. The function createUser takes name and email as string arguments and returns an error. The SQL query inserts a new record into the users table with the given name and email. The db.exec function executes the query with the provided parameters. The function returns an error if the execution fails. The read operation involves querying records from the database. The function getUser takes an ID as an integer argument and returns a pointer to a user struct and an error. The SQL query selects the ID, name, and email from the users table where the ID matches the provided ID. The db query row function executes the query and returns a single row. The row scan function populates the user struct with the data from the database. The function returns the user struct and an error if any of the operations fail. The update operation involves modifying existing records in the database. The function updateUser takes an ID as an integer, name and email as strings. It returns an error. The SQL query updates the name and email of the user in the users table, where the ID matches the provided ID. The dbExec function executes the query with the provided parameters. The function returns an error if the execution fails. The delete operation involves removing records from the database. The function deleteUser takes an ID as an integer argument and returns an error. The SQL query deletes the record from the users table where the ID matches the provided ID. The dbExec function executes the query with the provided parameters. The function returns an error if the execution fails. Database transactions ensure that a set of operations are completed together as a single unit. Start a transaction using db.begin. If there's an error beginning the transaction, return the error. Use defer_tx.rollback to ensure that the transaction is rolled back if any operation fails. Perform your database operations within the transaction, and finally commit the transaction with tx.commit. Here's a best practice for handling transactions, which is using defer for automatic cleanup. The function transfer money takes from N2 as integers and amount as a float 64 and returns an error. Start a transaction using db.begin. If there's an error beginning the transaction, return the error. Use defer_tx.rollback to ensure that the transaction is rolled back if any operation fails. Perform your operations and then commit the transaction with tx.commit. It is important to handle errors appropriately within transactions. After each operation, check if an error occurred. If an error occurred, roll back the transaction. If rolling back the transaction results in an error, return an error which includes both the original error and the rollback error. If no error occurred, proceed to the next operation or commit the transaction. Now you have seen the complete create, read, update, and delete implementation. This includes using the Go programming language, SQL databases, and transaction management. The create operation inserts new records with validation. The read operation queries and retrieves data efficiently. The update operation modifies existing records safely, and the delete operation removes records with constraints.
If you like this video, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. Visit CodeLucky.com for more such useful content.